I want to kick it to you first here. That is the Dallas Cowboys. They did finish 6-10 last season. They did miss the playoffs by a half a game. That Week 17 loss really hurt them. But of course, Dak Prescott went down Week 3 with that dislocated ankle, and they played with a third string and fourth string quarterback for 3 or 4 weeks throughout the season as well. But they had the 10th overall pick, very, very first. But tell me why. Who was their best pick in their opinion, and why?
Yeah, the best pick for them, without a doubt, I think, and it's a runaway on this one for me, is Micah Parsons, linebacker at Penn State. For where they got him as well, I really expected this guy to go barely outside of the top 5, somewhere between 6 and 10, and he did slip to them all the way down, and I believe they were 10, correct?
12. They traded back to 12.
Oh, yeah, they traded back. So that's right.
I forgot that, yeah.
So they trade back to 12. They knew Micah was still going to be on the board, so they moved back, gained some picks, and still get the guy they want to add to that already incredible linebacker core. So I think Micah Parsons out of Penn State, the linebacker, who is incredibly athletic, fast, just a take your head off kind of linebacker, can work into coverage, can be on the run support side of things, can blitz off the edge, whatever you really need this guy to do. He's a Swiss Army knife in a linebacking position, which is scary, and he adds to Leighton Vander Esch, who, if he was healthy, is a top linebacker in the league, and Jalen Smith, who is a top linebacker in the league, so adds to an already stout and incredible linebacking core.
Yeah, and they did lose Sean Lee due to retirement this offseason, a couple days before the draft. So I'm not for sure if that transitioned their pick or not, but either way, they did replace Sean Lee on that defensive side.
They've already got their next Sean Lee. It's Leighton Vander Esch.
Yeah. So Tori, in your eyes,
so you mean he's going to miss like all season because Sean Lee retired and already probably played more snaps for the Cowboys this year than he did the last 3 years.
So with that being
whole addition
said,
by subtraction.
With that being said, there, Tori, who is your best pick in your eyes for the Dallas Cowboys this season in 2021 NFL draft?
For me, they had a deep linebacking core already, so I didn't go Micah Parsons. For me, it was Kelvin Joseph. They lost Byron Jones, last year in free agency to the Dolphins. They were very thin and very weak at the corner position. They picked up Kelvin Joseph. That kind of solidifies that position. He's a good-sized corner. He's got great speed. Built, in my eyes, a lot like Byron Jones was. So if they can get the same kind of production out of Kelvin Joseph that they got out of Byron Jones, it's an absolute steal of a pick for them.
Yeah, so just so you guys know, Kelvin Jones was a cornerback out of Kentucky. They got them in the second round with the 44th overall pick. So you guys are giving me their first 2 picks as the best picks for the Cowboys this season. But Tori, I'm going to kick it to you first here. Who was their worst pick this draft?
Not far behind those picks is Nashawn Wright, who is also another corner, very tall corner, 6'4" cornerback. You don't see many 6'4" cornerbacks in the league. He's got good speed, but the thing is they picked him about a round too early. He could have been, about a 5th round pick, and I think they took him in the 4th.
Yeah, he was the third. Yeah, he was their third round pick, 99th overall.
Yeah, so he probably would have been there in the 5th round. So I do think that they reached quite a bit for him into a position that you already addressed. So if you thought really highly of Kelvin Joseph, what do you need Nashawn Wright for? But there again, as they say, you can never have enough depth. So,
right.
We'll see in the end. They may convert him into a safety. Just with his size, I could see him maybe potentially getting converted into a safety.
Yeah, and he was their 5th overall pick for the Cowboys there, and they went 7 straight picks on the defensive side of the ball, really adding depth to that defensive side. But Wyatt, who was their worst pick or maybe stretch in your eyes?
Well, I was going to go with Nashawn Wright, so Tori literally covered everything that I was going to. Like he said, 6'4" corner. He's got the length, but, at the same time, he was one of the only corners coming into this draft that, you really hadn't heard much about. And like you said, they drafted Kelvin just before that, so there really wasn't a need for that, and it was a reach as well. They could have had him in later rounds than what they got him. So, like I said, kind of doubling down on what Tori said because he nailed it. Got the nail right on the head with the exact same player that I was going to pick here. But yeah, Nashawn Wright out of Oregon State. And he also came out and said that he was going to be the next Richard Sherman, and that's not happening. So there you
Yeah,
go.
that's
There you
yeah,
go.
usually not the best thing in the world to say. The
Oh
thing
yeah,
is why I don't like that pick is they still needed to address stuff with their offensive line, and I touched on
yeah.
that yesterday. They could have used that pick to pick up an offensive lineman because there was still a lot of really good linemen left at that point in the draft.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that was the one thing that kind of threw a red flag to me was the Dallas Cowboys only drafting one offensive lineman, Josh Ball out of Marshall, I think it was the Thundering Herd.
Yeah,
They got him in the fourth round with the 130th overall pick. But you realize that they've lost three offensive linemen from their stout offensive line. I mean, they arguably had the best offensive line just 3 years ago,
3 years ago.
and
Yeah,
then injuries and neck operations and back issues. That makes that line really thin, really quick. So only getting one offensive lineman is kind of like what are you guys doing there? I mean, like, yes, I know the defense had issues, but the offensive line issue I had more issues because if you would have had a better offensive line, you may have had your starting quarterback all season. So why I want to kick you first here, giving that the Cowboys had 11 draft picks this season and they went 8 of them on the defensive side of the ball, what would you give their overall grade and why?
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned them majority of the picks for them being on the defensive side of the ball, and the defensive side of the ball being where most of the work needed to be done. So I will give them that. I will say, as for addressing their problems, I give them a solid B ranking somewhere in there. They could have went better on the offensive line, of course, especially on the offensive side. But when you look at the offensive side, there wasn't much need for tweaking because they've got one of the top offenses in the league. I mean, and their offensive line, yes, they're old and hurt and stuff, but even at that rate, they're still one of the best offensive line. If you get Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, and all of them healthy and good to go for the season, they're going to be a top 10 O line. I mean, it's just, I don't care how old they are, how, broken down they are over the years. They're just all studs. They're all incredible guys on the football field. So, as for addressing the offensive side of the ball, of course, they should have gone more with the, especially with some of the later round picks with getting some offensive line depth, maybe some guys to sit behind those guys that are currently in and learn more and then eventually get tossed in. But overall, I'd say it was a pretty average draft. I think they addressed a lot of issues that were needed. I think they missed a lot of issues that were more important, but I think they did address some issues that were needed. So I give them right at an average, a C.
So Tori, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Tyron retire this year because of the neck issue that he was having?
I don't know if he retired or not.
One of them
Was it
retired.
Lyle Collins?
I can't remember.
La'el Collins, yeah.
Yeah. So
Lyle
La'el
Collins
Collins.
okay.
retired.
Okay.
Yeah, Zach
I
Martin
just say it was
and him still there. So
yeah.
La'el Collins and Travis Frederick are both gone. Travis
Yeah,
left a season
that's
ago.
yeah.
Fredericks is who I was thinking of. So
Yeah.
why
Well,
you?
he retired because of the bear syndrome that Gears whatever is syndrome.
Yeah.
But which is pretty sad to see because he was one of the top centers in the game,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
he's a Badger.
So why you gave us 2 grades there? You gave us a B and a C. So which one are you going to
Yeah.
stick with?
That's
No,
really
I was saying as for like addressing their problems and stuff, I would give them a B. But I mean, as an overall grade, they get a C. They were average
Gotcha.
on the whole draft. Overall, it was a C. They addressed some problems they needed, but they didn't address some of the larger problems they needed, and they addressed some problems more than they should have, like cornerback.
So C equals championship in my books. Tori, what would you give them?
So, I mean, Wyatt was actually probably harsher on him than I was, and I probably hate Dallas more than he does. But my biggest thing is their grade for me would have been a little bit higher had they addressed a little bit more of the offensive line. I think they probably should have took 2 or 3 offensive linemen just to kind of see, what's going to work, who do we got that's going to fit our system, and so forth. So I rated them at a C plus. So, they didn't do anything spectacular. They didn't do anything terrible. It was even Nashawn Wright. It's kind of nitpicking at that point. So you gotta take it all with a grain of salt and look at their entire body of work. Yes, they resolved their defensive issues, but they neglected that offensive line issue just a little bit too much. If they would have took another lineman or 2, they probably would have been a B or a B plus in my book.